This is our Mycorrhizae fungi.
I'm Katie England.
I'm Scarlett Horner.
I'm Arian Mazzani.
And I'm Harrison Obiora.
Okay, so mycorrhizae is a word that literally means fungus root. And basically it is the symbiotic relationship between the fungi and the plant. So the fungi collects nutrients from the soil while the plant photosynthesizes and brings like sorts of energy and carbohydrates and whatnot to the fungi. Many plants often have this relationship with fungi, and usually the most common type of mycorrhiza is arbuscular, which majority use. Okay. Mycorrhizae usually affects plants differently. Like most of the time it's mutualistic, but sometimes it can be parasitic. For example, like the fungi need their own nutrients, so they just kind of take them away from the plant, and that's how that goes. But most of the time they are mutualistic. Responsiveness of plants is usually strong when nutrient levels are like lower, like when it's harder to find nutrients, because the plants could probably just find their own nutrients without it if it's in like very nutrient heavy soil.
Okay, so there are two types of mycorrhizae, and they're endomycorrhizae and ectomycorrhizae. And endomycorrhizae surround the root tips with hyphae that penetrate the root cortex cells through a symplastic root. And ectomycorrhizae do not penetrate the cortex cells, but they travel rather in an apoplastic route along the cell walls. And mycorrhizae is generally formed by fungi that survives as a spore in the soil, and they germinate and then they spread the thread-like hyphae. And the hyphae growth is contributed by plant hormone as well as phosphorus in the soil. And once the hyphae touches the root surface of a plant, the epidermis and an infection site forms in which the hyphae penetrates the outer layer of the root. The hyphae then grows between the cortex cells before penetrating the individual cells and forming new thread-like structures for ectomycorrhizae. And as indicated, and this image basically identifies the differences between ectomycorrhizae and endomycorrhizae. And in endomycorrhizae, there are these networks of hyphae within the cortex cells called arbuscules, and they increase the surface area for nutrient absorption as well as water for the plants. And for the function of mycorrhizae, the relationship between the plants and mycorrhizal fungi is mutualistic, because the fungi that contains the hyphae, which is the filaments that wrap around the skin root cells, that release the enzymes into the soil, digest macromolecules such as amino acids from plant decay and other organic matter. And the fungi then absorb the ionic products as well as water, which then become transported to the plants. The plants also provide sugars such as sucrose and glucose and other photosynthetic products to the mycorrhizal fungi. A thick root sheath provides protection against the soil pathogens as well as environmental pressures such as drought and soil contamination, as well as pH change. And based upon a higher nutrient absorption, mycorrhizal plants grow faster than non-mycorrhizal plants. And based upon this image, it is basically shown that sugar is transported to the mycorrhizal fungi, and the mycorrhizal fungi transport water and nutrients to the plant roots.
As a quick overview, mycorrhizae are relationships between the roots of plants and fungi. The fungi supply the plant with certain nutrients, and the plant in turn supplies the fungi with carbohydrates. This makes the relationship symbiotic, as both organisms benefit. The macrosymbiont, which is the plant, is able to gain increased access to the soil. The way it does this is through an intricate net of hyphae. This increases the uptake of water and nutrients from the soil by increasing the surface area. The microsymbiont, which is the fungus, uses the carbon provided by the plant. This is useful in many ways. Most notably, it's through the physiological functions and growth and development. There are many observable benefits in this type of exchange. To mention a few, as already said, it increases the efficiency of absorbing water and nutrients from the soil. It increases drought resistance. It increases the plant health and vigor, as well as minimizing stress. There's also an enhanced seedling growth as well as rooting of cuttings. There are many other benefits that this relationship causes, but these are just the most notable.
Provide plants with nitrogen that's crucial to a plant's development. This is not always the case. We found a fascinating study that wished to test the symbiotic relationship between plant roots and mycorrhizae fungi by following the carbon-nitrogen exchange rates in the large boreal pine forest. First, the exchange rates were observed without the addition of external nitrogen, and after data was collected in that scenario, nitrogen was injected into the soil to test whether introducing nitrogen into the soil would prove beneficial for both parties. Studies show that in boreal forests, where the nitrogen content is rather low in comparison to other areas of full vegetation, mycorrhizae fungi actually withhold nitrogen from the plants they're in a relationship with and keep most of the nitrogen they obtain for themselves. In addition to that, the study noted that as more carbon was transferred from plant to fungi, the more the fungi immobilized nitrogen and kept more of it for themselves. It had been previously assumed that there was a fixed exchange rate of nitrogen and carbon between the plants and mycorrhizae fungi. This, of course, is not the case in situations where nitrogen is scarce. As seen in the graph, the more carbon that's supplied to a mycorrhizae fungi, the more nitrogen the fungi withholds, and the release or transfer of this harnessed nitrogen is only given away if the fungi has a surplus of nitrogen. With this, a positive feedback loop essentially gets established that transforms the mutualistic relationship between the plant and mycorrhizae fungi to a parasitic relationship in favor of the fungi. It's important to note that when the soils were artificially injected with nitrogen, exchange rates between plants and fungi return back to regular predicted levels. The data collected from this experiment provides a reason why there is such a strong nitrogen limitation in nitrogen-poor ecosystems with active mycorrhizae trees, a problem that diminishes when disturbances such as wildfire or forest clearings help break the link between the symbionts.
So in conclusion, mycorrhizae are generally considered mutualistic, but have been able to be parasitic in some cases found.